Welcome. Over the last 2 years, state and local agencies have paid out lots of money and lots of benefits to help people deal with the pandemic. They've also seen a huge increase in fraud. Joining me to talk about that today and how state and local governments can deal with fraud is Steve Caimi. He has nearly 25 years of experience in cybersecurity. He's the director of product marketing for public sector at Okta. And before that, he led cybersecurity evangelism at Cisco. Steve, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. What do you think is behind the huge increase in fraud that state and local organizations are seeing?
Yeah, you already teed it up right there, right? The pandemic really changed a lot of things. And not to belabor the pandemic topic, but it really is surprising over the past 18 months how that pushed the transformation of government services online, right? The pandemic forced offices to close, to do things that we maybe never dreamed of doing in government, doing them all online. And as you know, Francis, anytime we do things online, we start creating more accounts, engaging more digitally, especially when there's money involved, the fraudsters come out, they find ways of exploiting the situation, especially with the increased load. Remember how we had things like millions of unemployment claims in some of the early days of the pandemic. So obviously there was a flock, to online systems, and we really saw an amazing transformation occur over the past 18 months.
How are you seeing organizations reprioritizing their security and identity systems to try to fight fraud?
Yeah, there's been a lot of lessons learned over the time here, right? Obviously, government is trying to get money into the hands of people, especially things like unemployment. But not just that, right? There's the idea of I think there's a recent executive order that talked about this time tax, right? The idea of getting money into the hands of people because it's taxing when you're waiting, for government services to give you the funds that you need to survive in a lot of cases. So state and local agencies are, they're starting to recognize that doing things the way we do them in the past, right, with creating individual accounts, interacting individually with state and local agencies, right, it's just a recipe for, major challenges. So they've started taking a closer look at the role of identity and the role of authentication and authorization in the entire process, and taking away a lot of old dependencies on things like legacy systems, things like password-based, authentication and so forth, and even going beyond the basics of information that you can easily find out online from people. Right? There's been a massive number of breaches that are out there. It's a lot of data that either people willingly put out there about themselves, right, that can be used against them, or that have been stolen from other organizations and they may not even realize it. Right? So being able to better prove who these identities are, and we can certainly explore that a little bit more. And then once we've validated that identity, to continually authenticate that individual with strong authentication to make sure that that person is who they say they are.
Yeah, I do want to explore that because I think there's a huge hunger for tools to build a more robust identity proofing structure, to build greater security capabilities so that organizations know the person that says that they're the one applying is really the one applying, and the person that receives that benefit is actually supposed to get that benefit.
Absolutely. And it starts with making sure that that person is who they say they are, right? So one of the things that we, sort of teed up is this concept called identity proofing. And this is using information about people that's not readily found online. So I'll give you an example. I recently transferred, money between two banks. Financial institutions have been at the forefront, of things like this. During the course of that process, it started asking me questions because it was a high risk sort of transaction. Right? They started asking me questions about what was the range of your mortgage payment that you took out 20 years ago, right? What was the range of your student loan payment? I mean, I can still remember to this day the actual dollar amount of my student loan payment, but how many fraudsters out there are going to know that kind of information? So there's organizations that are out there that the public sector can leverage, right? Commercial organizations that do this type of identity proofing to go through the process of not only the initial registration, but for also things like, doing step up type of, either re-authentication or step up sort of risk-based, transactions. So that's the first step, right? And then once you've actually proven that person is who they say they are, right? We can't just at that point shrug our shoulders and rely on the username and password from that point forward. So a major point in modernizing is leveraging modern multi-factor authentication and doing it in a way that's really simple and easy for any citizen in the entire country to use. Right. So being able to back that up with a second factor that a fraudster won't be able to have. These are two things that we think are, really at the forefront of transforming digital government at the state and local level.
And we're seeing how this is growing as a priority for state chief information officers, Steve, on the NASCIO annual list of top priorities. Identity and access management was number 8 last year. It's number 6 this year. What should those leaders resource in the new year to really make headway on that priority and the others that are at the top of that list?
And it's funny when you look through that entire list, right? You can actually weave cybersecurity through all of them. And one thing that's been a constant, probably for at least the past 7 years, maybe more, is that idea of security or cybersecurity, right? And risk management at the very top. Identity management, we just talked about, right? That played a clear role in making sure that, improving the overall posture of cybersecurity. Another aspect of it was modernization, right? Tying in the idea that, a lot of times the way we handled identity at the state and local level was either built into these legacy systems or, tied into some, application or just an old way of doing it, right? So when you take a look at that list of different priorities, right, cybersecurity and risk management being at the top, but layering in concepts like, hey, we need to modernize our infrastructure. We need to leverage cloud, based services. We need to do a better job of managing identities, right? I think all that kind of weaves through a story that says, like, look, state and local agencies can indeed look to the commercial sector who've been doing this and with modern capabilities, right, a lot better than we can do in-house. And the other wonderful thing about that is rather than doing it in-house, we can focus the resources that we have, our contractors, to build out a better citizen experience rather than trying to recreate, the identity wheel that's been modernized over the past 10, 11 years by the commercial sector.
Steve, a lot of great information there. Thanks very much for sharing it with me, and thanks for joining me today.
I appreciate it.